In the early 90s, Frank Peretti wrote a novel titled This Present Darkness. I don't think he got everything right about the nature of spiritual warfare, but one thing that book did an amazing job at was to enable the reader to imagine the unseen realm of angels and demons. In Mark 5, Jesus gives us a real-life glimpse of that world.
Welcome to the Food for Your Soul podcast, where we apply the Word of God to the hearts of men and women to stoke the fires of your delight in Christ. Here's your host, Dr. D. Richard Ferguson.
Well, last week we left off with a boat full of men soaked to the skin, dumbfounded over the stilling of the storm by Jesus. Now they're making their way across the silent sea toward the eastern side of the sea. He told the wind and the waves to be still, and they did not gradually die down. It was immediate, first-time obedience. He didn't have to count to 3. He didn't say, this is my last warning, don't make me get out of this boat. He didn't have to do any of that, because the inanimate creation never disobeys the Creator. So now the sky is clear, the air is still, water is calm, the boat glides into the shore. Now, we don't know if this next event here takes place that same night or if they slept on the beach and then got up the next morning and this is the next morning. But as soon as they take a look around and they can see the surroundings, they find themselves, as they land on the shore here, in the most unpleasant, unclean, defiling context that they could imagine. It's really just an eerie scene. Verse 1, when they went across the lake into the region of the Gerasenes. Now, at this point in Jesus' ministry, remember, he's facing massive rejection, wholesale rejection. He's been rejected by almost everyone, the spiritual leaders in Israel, all the way from them down to his own mother in some ways. So it's fairly dramatic when last week we saw him get in a boat and cross this lake, the Sea of Galilee, to the other side. The reason that's dramatic is because they're not just leaving that area. They're crossing a border and leaving a country. They're out of Israel now. This area now is dominated by pagans, by Greeks, who were never on good terms with the Jews. For the Jews, it was defiling just to stand on Gentile ground. And the Jews, in their list of defiling things that would defile you, number 1 on the list was a dead body. Guess where they happened to land on shore? Right in an area of caves that were used as tombs. They put dead bodies, just left them in there. And if all that's not unclean enough for the Jewish person, on the hillside was grazing a herd of 2,000 pigs. That's really not kosher. But if this place seemed unclean because of the Gentiles and because of the pigs and the tombs, that's nothing compared to the real problem in this place. Demons. Demons. We're going to find this place was overrun with thousands of demons. In their minds, the disciples, as they see this a situation like this is about as far from God's presence as you can get in their kind of thinking. I mean, they're outside the temple. They're certainly not in the Holy of Holies, right? They're not in even Jerusalem. They're not even in Israel. They're in a pagan land, in pagan territory, among tombs and pigs and thousands of demons. Jesus had led these men right into the darkest depths of the most contaminating, defiling uncleanness imaginable. In verse 2, when Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an unclean spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Now that's a horrible situation. It's hard to imagine ending up in a situation worse than this guy's situation. Just think of your worst enemy having control over your body. This is worse than that. This is a demon. A being who is only evil, without any good, who hates you and wants nothing more than your total destruction. Imagine a being like that being in control of your body and your mind. What a horror. I mean, just look at the things that this demon does to this guy. He's got him living in those caves with the dead bodies. I mean, for most people, just walking through a graveyard gives you the willies. This guy is living with the corpses. Luke mentions that for a long time he had not worn clothes. Total humiliation, degradation, stripped of all dignity. Verse 5, he would cry out, literally shriek, and cut himself with stones. And we're going to see in a minute that he has superhuman strength. So the demons, they're causing him to injure himself. Either that or he's doing it to drive them out or something. But he's cutting himself with these stones with his superhuman strength. And the wounds, of course, would go unattended. His body just one mass of lacerations and infections and scar tissue and scabs. And his mind a total delirium of pain and insanity. And in his more lucid moments, he must have realized how repulsive he was to everyone. How hated he was. No doubt regarded as subhuman. Said he had often been chained hand and foot. So the demons came on him in episodes. When he's not having an episode, they can bind him. He doesn't have the strength. Very often he's chained up. Luke said, and kept under guard, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. It's a horrible existence for this man. Unimaginable. And life isn't exactly roses for the community either with this guy. Verse 5, night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out. The reason they were chaining him up was for the safety of the community. Can you imagine having a guy like this loose in your neighborhood? I mean, you got your kids to worry about. This guy's running loose. Matthew says that there was also a second guy with him. And these two men, they were so violent, no one could pass that way. Well, I guess not. You're not going to go anywhere near there. Two super strong, demonized maniacs running loose. People who lived in there would have been in constant danger, and nothing could be done about it. They tried. Nothing could be done about it. So they arrive on the beach. Disciples climb out of the boat, pull it up on the shore, into a scene that's just right out of a horror movie. So picture yourself there. Imagine you're in the boat with them. You're getting the boat secured, and you're tying it up, and while you're tying it, you keep looking towards those creepy caves, and suddenly, out of the darkness, you hear this bone-chilling shrieks and demonic screams that just curdle your blood. And here comes this maniac running down the hill, completely naked, screaming, shrieking, and he's got superhuman strength. This guy can break irons and smash them to pieces. And I mean, this is worse than the storm. You're thinking, this is like out of the frying pan in the fire. So you duck behind Jesus. A couple other disciples are running, maybe getting back in the boat, and you're scrambling around a little bit. You look at Jesus. He doesn't move. He stands there, doesn't budge. This guy charges straight at him with all his superhuman strength. Jesus doesn't even move a muscle. He just stands there. And the maniac doesn't stop running until he gets right up to Jesus. And then, verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell down in front of him. The word is proskuneo. It's the normal word translated worship. Now, obviously, this isn't the worship of adoration. He doesn't adore Jesus. He hates Jesus. But it may be an attempt to get some mercy from Jesus, or maybe it's just involuntary homage. A creature collapsed at the feet of its creator. Certainly not adoration, though. Verse 7, he shouted at the top of his voice. All three Gospels mention the shouting. He's there on his face. He's got his face in the dirt before Jesus, still shouting, screaming, shrieking, while bowed down. You say, oh, that sounds weird. It is weird. That's just weird. It's just bizarre. When demons pay homage, it's just as grotesque as everything else they ever do. It's the unnatural craziness of the demon. He recognizes that he's confronted here with a superior power, and his knees buckle, but he keeps screaming. And at this point, according to verse 8, Jesus commands that demon to come out. But they don't. The demon doesn't come out. Now that's unique. We've never seen that before in the Gospels. In fact, you don't see that anywhere else in the Gospels. This is very strange. Jesus usually enforces first-time obedience on demons just like he does on wind and waves. And the split second he says go, they're gone. Every other time. But this time, Jesus momentarily allows this demon to disobey and even answer back. Look at verse 7. What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? This demon knows exactly who he's dealing with. On the lake, the disciples have been asking, what kind of man is this? Well, here's their answer. He's the Son of the Most High God. And in Matthew's account, he adds, the demon says, have you come here to torture us before the appointed time? So, the demon wants to give Jesus a lesson here on eschatology. The demons don't understand. They don't think this is right. The demons didn't understand the first and second coming of the Messiah any more than anybody else did. It wasn't revealed. It was a mystery in the Old Testament that wasn't revealed, that the Messiah would come twice and there'd be a gap in between. And so they don't understand this. So the demons, they see the Messiah and they're like, wait a minute, not yet. We're not at the end of the book of Revelation yet. This can't be happening. That period between Jesus' first coming and the second coming, theologians call that the already but not yet stage of the kingdom. He came the first time, set up his kingdom. It's already set up. It's already inaugurated, but it's not yet in place in its final, full, complete, ultimate state. And it's interesting because in the already but not yet, there's portions of it that are here, portions of it that are not yet. And the disciples appreciated the already part of the kingdom, but they were confused about the not yet. The disciples, they saw the Messiah, they said, great, kingdom is here, we're here. But they scratched their heads and they say, wait a second, where are all the glorious promises? And they didn't understand about the not yet. The demons had the opposite confusion. The demons understand the not yet part. This isn't the end yet. It's not the appointed time for Judgment Day yet. But they didn't understand the already part. And they're scratching their heads about, why is the Messiah here? And at this point, the demons evidently become emboldened. Because maybe this demon realized, he's like, he just told me to get out. I'm still here. And he gets bold in verse 7. Swear to God that you won't torture me. Literally, I adjure you by God not to torture me. He's trying to put Jesus under oath. This demon is trying to pull a power play on the Son of the Most High God. He sees Jesus in the weakness of his human nature and he thinks, maybe I can intimidate him. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but think about it for a minute. Just picture the scene. Jesus is a human being. He's a man. These demons have never, ever had any trouble with any human being. Human beings are a piece of cake for demons. Isaiah 37:36, one angel killed 185,000 Assyrians in one night. That's the kind of power that these beings have. Demons are at the same level as angels. We know that because in Daniel 10:13, remember the one angel was sent and the demon resisted him for 3 weeks until Michael finally came and helped. So, incredibly powerful beings. I mean, one of them killed 185,000 men. They've never had any trouble with men. Never. And they see Jesus, and he's physically and emotionally spent. You ever had one of those times where night after night, you don't get any rest, and finally one night you're able to fall asleep. Right after you fall asleep, somebody comes and wakes you up. Well, that happened to Jesus last night. Remember? He finally got to sleep, and then the disciples waking him up. Jesus, there's a storm, we're sinking, and all that. Spoiled his night's sleep. So he's weak, he's tired, he's spent. And he's not just facing one demon here. We find out in verse 9, Jesus asked him, what is your name? And let me just, as an aside here, sometimes people see this, they assume from this that that's part of the strategy of casting out demons. You have to get their name, and you got to go through this little strategy. That's not what Jesus is doing here. This isn't a procedure for resorting to tricks to find out ways to cast out the demon. Jesus cast out many, many, many demons. Never once do you see him asking their name first. And even here, he asked this name, but he doesn't use the name. When he casts this demon out, he doesn't use his name. He doesn't ever mention his name. He just says, go. So, the reason Jesus is asking this demon his name at this point it's not for his information, it's for our information. It's for the disciples' information. He wanted the disciples to understand what the reality of what was going on here, because the disciples had no way of knowing what was going on. So the demon says, my name is Legion, for we are many. Now, legion, the word legion, that description of a Roman contingent of the Roman army that referred to 6,000 soldiers. A legion would have as many as 6,000 soldiers and 120 horsemen. That's a legion. So the term legion would call to mind not only huge numbers, but also efficient organization, formidable, relentless military strength. We're a legion. We're an army. So change the lenses here on your eyes and look at this scene as it really is. Jesus is exposing the reality of it at the spiritual level. There's Jesus with his 12 helpless, weak, tired human beings, far from the temple, far from Jerusalem, outside the Holy Land, on the devil's home turf. And surrounding these 12 men, these 13 men, however many, were thousands of evil, vile, powerful, vicious demons, each one of them perfectly capable of killing. And they're everywhere. They're all over the hillside. They're in the boat. They're surrounding each disciple. Hundreds of the biggest, most powerful, most vicious of them surrounding Jesus and poised for attack.
One of the most difficult parts of living the Christian life is remaining aware of the unseen realm, the spiritual world. The physical, temporal world is right in front of our face all day, and it's so easy to just lose perspective of the relationship between temporal things and eternal things. As you go through your day today, try to remember as often as possible to consider the spiritual world. And I don't mean just thinking about all the activity of angels and demons around you, although that's part of it, but a much bigger, more important part is to consider the kingdom of God. Yes, angels and demons may be there in the room with you right now, but so is God. Stop to consider the war he's waging against the work of Satan, and think about his will and his purposes and his desires. What is he working to accomplish through you and around you? And what is your role in that cosmic program?
Thank you for listening. If you found today's episode edifying, why not share it with a friend? A simple post on social media can change a person's day. This season, the Food for Your Soul podcast features excerpts from our sermon series on the Gospel of Mark. Over 130 expository sermons covering every verse. You can find those and hundreds of other sermons for free download on drichardferguson.com. Until next time, rejoice in the Lord always and set your mind on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God.